No one dared sit near her. Not on the transit barges that glided through the upper atmosphere of Aurelian Station. Not in the lecture halls where future diplomats learned to speak with alien tongues. Not even in the grand dining ring where hundreds of species gathered beneath artificial starlight. Wherever she appeared, an invisible circle of empty space formed around her, as if fear itself needed room to breathe. She was called Queen Seraphel of the Virolith Dominion, though few dared speak her name aloud. The Virolith were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They did not invade with fleets or burn cities. They conquered through gravity, literal gravity. Their bodies generated subtle gravitational fields that bent matter and emotion alike. To stand too close to a Virolith was to feel your knees grow weak, your thoughts grow slow, you will begin to curve toward theirs. Seraphel was the most powerful of them all. I was just a human exchange cadet on Aurelian Station, a diplomatic hub where species learn to coexist without destroying each other. My name is Elias Rhine, and at 19 I was far from important. I studied xenolinguistics, lived in a cramped dorm cube, and spent most evenings alone, translating alien poetry into clumsy human phrasing. That night, everything changed. The station's grand concourse was filled with its usual evening hum, floating lantern drones, holographic waterfalls, the low vibration of distant engines. I carried a tray of nutrient bowls, weaving through tables of chittering insectoid merchants and luminous gas creatures contained in hovering spheres. Then the room went quiet. Not silent, just pulled inward. I turned and saw her. Queen Seraphel stood at the threshold, tall and slender, her skin like polished obsidian threaded with faint silver veins that pulsed like slow lightning. A crown of floating crystal shards circled her head, rotating with stately precision. Her eyes were galaxies, spirals of violet light that seemed to stretch away forever. No guards accompanied her. She needed none. Everyone bowed. Some dropped to one knee. Others simply stared at their plates, hoping invisibility could be achieved through humility. A circular table in the center of the concourse cleared instantly, patrons vanishing as though the chairs had burst into flames. Within seconds, the table stood empty, except for one chair still occupied.
Mine.
I froze mid-step, tray balanced awkwardly in my hands. I hadn't noticed the exodus. I'd been too busy worrying about whether my nutrient bowls would spill. Now I realized I was sitting alone at the most forbidden table on the station. And Seraphel was walking toward me. Each step she took made the air feel heavier. My heartbeat slowed, dragged by invisible weight. A strange pressure wrapped around my thoughts, like gentle hands testing the firmness of my skull. I wanted to stand,
To bow. To flee.
My muscles refused. She stopped at the table. The entire concourse watched in breathless stillness. Seraphel tilted her head. Human, she said. Her voice was not spoken aloud, yet I heard it perfectly inside my mind. Why do you sit where none dare? I swallowed. I didn't know this seat was forbidden, Your Radiance. A ripple of amusement flickered across her star-filled eyes. You speak without trembling, she observed. I am trembling, I said. Internally. A few nearby beings gasped. Humor directed at a Virolith queen was unheard of. Seraphel's gaze softened, the crushing gravity easing just slightly. She extended a hand toward the empty chair opposite me. I will dine, she said, with you. A ripple of shock spread across the concourse. No one dared protest. No one dared breathe. She sat. The moment she did, the gravitational pressure intensified. Glasses trembled. Light fixtures vibrated. I felt my bones grow heavy, my thoughts slow. Yet beneath the weight, there was something else. A presence. A consciousness vast and ancient pressing gently against mine. You fear me, she said. I respect you, I answered carefully. Respect is born of fear. Not always, I said. Sometimes it's born of curiosity. That earned another flicker of amusement. We ate in silence for a while. I tried not to look directly into her eyes. It felt like leaning over a cliff edge into infinity. Finally, Seraphel asked, "What do you study, Elias Rhine?" I nearly choked. She knew my name. Xenolinguistics, I said. I study how species shape meaning. And what meaning do humans shape for the Virolith? She asked. I hesitated. Truth felt dangerous. Most humans think the Virolith are tyrants, I admitted, because no one can resist your gravity. They believe you bend civilizations to your will. Seraphel looked away. For the first time, her gaze seemed tired. Do you believe this? I don't know enough to decide. Her hand rested on the table, fingers long and graceful. The metal surface warped slightly beneath her touch. You speak honestly, she said. Few do. Then she did something that shattered every rule of diplomatic decorum. She stood and extended her hand toward me. Come, she said. The concourse erupted into stunned murmurs. I stared at her hand, unsure whether taking it meant death, glory, or madness. But curiosity, my most human flaw, won. I placed my hand in hers. Instantly, the world vanished. I stood on a vast plain beneath swirling violet skies. Towers of obsidian stretched upward like frozen lightning. Rivers of glowing silver flowed across the land, bending and looping as though gravity itself were uncertain. You are in the mindscape of Virolith, Seraphel's voice echoed. Few outsiders have walked here. I turned to see her towering above me, larger now, more radiant. Why bring me here? I asked. Because you sat where none dared, she said. Because you spoke without fear. Because you do not judge without knowing. She gestured to the silver rivers. This is our truth. The Virolith evolved on a world of crushing gravity. We survived by learning to shape it. To control gravity is our nature, our instinct. But when we ventured to the stars, others saw only domination. They fear what they cannot resist. She looked at me with those galaxy eyes. I am not feared because I am cruel, she said. I am feared because I cannot turn my power off. I watched the silver rivers twist and coil, beautiful and terrifying. Then why become queen? I asked. Because without a throne, others of my kind would fight for dominance. My rule keeps the dominion stable, but it is lonely. Lonely. The word from such a being felt impossibly human. I stepped closer. The gravity intensified, pressing on my shoulders, but I held firm. Then maybe you need someone who isn't afraid to sit beside you, I said. Seraphel regarded me silently. Then she reached out and touched my forehead. A surge of energy rushed through me. Memories not mine flooded my mind. Virolith children learning to shape gravity, worlds bent into orbit, wars ended by a single raised hand. When it ended, I gasped for breath. You understand now, she said. Our burden. I nodded slowly. I do. Then return with me, she said, and sit at my side. Not as servant, not as subject, as witness, as reminder that fear can be challenged. The weight of her words was heavier than her gravity, but I knew the answer before I spoke. I will, I said. We returned to the concourse. Everyone stared as Seraphel stood beside me, my hand still in hers. The circle of empty space around her did not vanish, but now I stood inside it, not bowing, not fleeing, standing. From that day on, I accompanied her through the station. Whispers followed us. Diplomats stammered. Guards grew nervous. But Seraphel's gravity never harmed me. She adjusted it, carefully, precisely, as though I were something fragile and rare. Over weeks, we spoke of culture, language, and loneliness. She learned jokes. I learned patience. Slowly, the station's fear eased, not gone, but softened by the sight of a human walking willingly beside the queen who once inspired terror. Then one day, a crisis struck. A rogue fleet from a rival empire attacked the station's perimeter, their weapons designed to shatter artificial gravity fields. Panic erupted. Species scattered. Systems failed. The station trembled. Seraphel stood at the central control ring, her eyes blazing with violet fire. She raised her arms, bending gravity to shield the station. The strain was immense. I could feel it pressing against my skull. She faltered. Without thinking, I stepped forward and took her arm.
"Lean on me," I said.
Her eyes widened. "You cannot bear this." "Maybe not," I said. "But you don't have to stand alone." She gripped my arm. Together, we stood. Gravity stabilized. The station's defenses reformed. The rogue fleet retreated, their weapons warped by unseen forces. When it was over, Seraphel released me slowly. For the first time since I met her, the gravitational pressure faded entirely. The concourse erupted in cheers from every species. No one feared her now. They revered her. And they looked at me, not as prey, not as servant, but as the one who stood beside the queen when no one else dared. Later, in the quiet of her private observatory, Seraphel gazed at the stars. "You changed everything," she said. "No," I replied.
"You did."
I just sat down. She turned to me, galaxy eyes shining softly. "Elias Rhine," she said, "no one dared sit near me until you took my arm. And in doing so, you taught the galaxy that power without connection is emptiness." I smiled. "Then let's keep sitting together." Seraphel extended her hand, and I took it, not out of fear, but out of choice. The attack had ended hours ago, but Aurelian Station still trembled with aftershocks of awe. Emergency lights had returned to their normal soft gold hue. The artificial waterfalls flowed again. The lantern drones resumed their gentle orbits. Life had gone back to normal, except nothing was normal anymore. Because everyone had seen it. They had seen the queen of the Virilith Dominion, an entity who could bend moons, who could crush armies with a thought, stagger beneath the weight of her own power. And they had seen a human take her arm.
Not to bow.
Not to serve, but to steady her. Whispers followed me through every corridor now. Some filled with reverence. Some with disbelief. Some with fear that had simply changed direction from her to us together. I walked beside Seraphel through the grand observation hall. Stars stretched beyond the glass dome, distant suns burning like silent witnesses. She moved more slowly than usual, not weak, but thoughtful, as though she carried a new kind of gravity inside her, unfamiliar and delicate. We stopped before the largest viewport. Below, the curve of a blue-green planet glowed peacefully. Civilization continued. Trade routes would resume.
Treaties would be signed.
History would remember today. But history would never know the quiet truth. Seraphel spoke without turning her head. When I first left my homeworld, I believed fear was the only force that maintained order. Fear of gravity. Fear of inevitability. Fear of me. Her voice was softer now, no longer echoing inside my skull but resonating beside me like a real voice, almost human in tone. But today, she continued, I learned that gravity is not the strongest force in the universe. I glanced at her. What is then? She finally looked at me. Those galaxy eyes no longer felt infinite and distant. They felt present.
Choice, she said.
You chose to stand where no one else would.
You chose not to fear me.
You chose to hold me when I faltered. I shrugged lightly. Someone had to. Her lips curved, an expression rare among Virilith, almost mythic. In my dominion, she said, a bond formed through shared gravity is sacred. It is not command. It is not possession. It is acknowledgement that two beings alter each other's path. I swallowed. Are you saying? She raised a hand gently. Not marriage. Not rulership. Not obligation. Something older. Something simpler. She extended her hand again. Walk beside me, Elias Rhine. Not as subject. Not as protector. But as equal witness to a new age. Around us, unseen but certainly watching, diplomats, guards, merchants, and scholars waited in absolute silence. No one dared interrupt. No one dared breathe too loudly. I looked at her hand. I remembered the weight of her gravity, the vastness of her mindscape, the loneliness behind her power. And I remembered my own small, stubborn refusal to be afraid. So I took her hand. The station's artificial gravity adjusted in a subtle ripple. Not a crushing wave. Not a bending of will. A harmony. For the first time in recorded history, a Virilith queen allowed another being to share her gravitational field fully, without resistance. Gasps echoed. Cameras activated. News channels would broadcast this moment across 1,000 systems. But none of that mattered. Only the warmth of her hand. Only the steady pull that no longer felt like force but connection. Seraphel turned toward the gathered assembly. Let it be known, she declared, her voice now ringing aloud through the hall, that fear shall no longer be the foundation of peace. Understanding shall take its place. Today, the Dominion opens its gravity to the galaxy. Silence followed. Then applause.
Cheers.
Sounds from 100 species, impossible and beautiful. I leaned slightly toward her. Looks like you just changed the universe. She inclined her head. No, Elias Rhine. We did. Later, when the crowds dispersed and the stars watched alone, we stood once more at the viewport. No thrones. No titles. No distance. Just two figures, side by side, watching galaxies drift in the dark. No one dared sit near her, until she took my arm, and in that simple act, the universe shifted. Not by force,
but by choice.